Wind sweeps across the surface of a pitch-black ocean. There is no shore, no sand, no horizon to break the violent, rolling swells. Most people assume water in the biblical text is merely a geographical backdrop, a convenient setting for a historical event or a miracle. The phrase, "he shouts over the storm," is ego eimi. It is the exact Greek translation of the divine name revealed at the burning bush. I am. He climbs into the boat. The wind instantly drops dead. The surface of the water turns to glass. The chaos submits. This is not a parlor trick. It is a theological declaration. Every Jewish mind in that boat knows the ancient poetry. They know, Job chapter 9, says Yahweh alone tramples the waves of the sea. They know Psalm 89 says God alone rules the surging of the ocean. When Jesus steps onto the raging water, he is not merely proving he has authority over the weather. He is standing exactly where the ancient scrolls say. Only the Creator can stand. He is putting his heel on the neck of the monster. The sea is a defeated enemy. The abyss has a master. But stomping on the chaos outside the boat is only half the solution. Because the most dangerous water in the world is not the sea that threatens to drown you. It is the thirst that threatens to hollow you out from the inside. You know what it is like to be chronically thirsty. Not the physical need for a glass of liquid, but the quiet, desperate ache of a life trying to find something that actually holds up under pressure. The exhaustion of constantly striving for a satisfaction that evaporates. Or, if they read it symbolically, they assume it is always a simple metaphor for cleansing. A picture of washing away what is dirty, the moment you finally hold it in your hands. John chapter 4, verse 10. A woman walks to a stone well in the blistering midday sun. Dust coats her sandals. She is carrying heavy, empty clay jars and a lifetime of fractured relationships. She is coming to the edge of town, in the sweltering heat, to draw stagnant water from a deep hole in the ground, avoiding the crowds of the cool morning because of her shame. She is entirely depleted, and a Jewish teacher sitting by the edge of the well looks at her and offers her something impossible. He tells her that if she knew who he was, she would ask, and he would give her living water. The exact phrase Jesus uses in the Greek text is zau hudor. In the first century, this was not a mystical, ethereal metaphor. Its range of meaning was profoundly practical. Zau hudor was the literal agricultural phrase used to describe running water. It meant a moving stream, an artesian spring, a river that possessed its own kinetic momentum. It was the direct opposite of cistern water, which sat dead, dark, and stagnant in a carved rock pit until you hauled it up hand over hand with a heavy, wet rope. It is the exact imagery the prophet Jeremiah uses centuries earlier when God indicts his people for a devastating spiritual trade of baptism and spiritual renewal. And it does carry that weight sometimes. But if you look closer at the ancient Hebrew worldview, at the exact words, "They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters," and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. That ancient context changes everything about this encounter. When Jesus offers her zau hudor, he is diagnosing the core exhaustion of her entire existence. The living water is not a temporary coping mechanism for a difficult life. It is an internal artesian well that never runs dry. If you are in a season where you feel constantly drained, where you are repeatedly carrying heavy jars to the same broken wells, a career that demands your soul, a relationship you hope will fix you, a relentless cycle of digital distraction, you are drinking dead water. You pull the heavy rope, you take a drink of validation or numbing entertainment, and by midnight, your throat is dry again. The panic always returns. The thirst always comes back. But the zau hudor Christ offers possesses its own life. It breathes. It flows. It actively pushes back against the internal chaos of the Tehom from the inside out, rising up to eternal life so that you never have to haul an empty jar to a broken well ever again. But releasing that river into the human heart required a devastating price. To give you this water, The architect had to do more than walk on top of the sea. He had to let the chaos swallow him whole. The writers chose when they stared out at the ocean. At what actually happens. Every time the water rises, you start to see something. Crucifixion is a science of suffocation. The lungs fill. The diaphragm locks. The muscles spasm. A man hanging on a Roman cross does not bleed to death. He drowns. He drowns in his own internal fluids. The pressure builds in the chest cavity. The heart labors against the crushing weight of the liquid gathering around it. Every drawn breath is an agony of lifting torn shoulders against iron nails. Every exhalation is a war. And on a Friday afternoon outside Jerusalem, the war ends. Jesus of Nazareth drops his chin to his chest. He stops breathing. He dies. But John chapter 19 records a detail that modern readers speed right past. The Roman executioners need to clear the crosses before sundown. They carry heavy iron mallets. They break the legs of the two thieves to speed up the asphyxiation. But when a soldier walks over to the center cross, he sees the body is already dead. He does not swing the mallet. He raises a spear. He drives the cold iron blade up into the ribcage. He pierces the side. And John records exactly what falls to the dust. Blood and water. Medical professionals have studied this passage for decades. They call it pericardial effusion. They explain how severe cardiovascular trauma causes a watery fluid to gather around the heart. When the spear punctures the sac, the clear fluid empties out alongside the thick blood. The anatomy is precise. The physiological record is brutally accurate. The simple washing reading completely misses. Water is not a gentle metaphor for getting clean. It is the ancient symbol for untamed, terrifying chaos. But John is not writing an autopsy report. He is writing a theological revelation. This is not a random biological detail. It is the climax of a cosmic war. Remember the darkness of Genesis 1. Remember the chaos of the Tehom. Remember the unmaking of the global flood. Remember the crushing, pitch-black waves of the Galilean storm. Throughout the entire biblical narrative, the deep waters are the ultimate enemy. They represent the abyss. They represent the untamed, monstrous force that violently swallows life whole. On the cross, Jesus takes the chaos into his own lungs. He absorbs the unmaking of the world. He drinks the bitter cup of the abyss down to the dregs. The chaos hits him. The judgment crashes over his head. The waters rise to his neck. The Tehom finally swallows the architect. But when the Roman spear tears open his side, the water flows out. The abyss does not hold him. The chaos is drained. The monster is emptied. From the torn side of the second Adam, life pours into the dirt of a ruined earth. Blood for the atonement. Water for the cleansing. The sea tried to swallow the king, but the king swallowed the sea. And when you realize what actually happened to the chaos on that execution stake, you finally understand the strangest, most confusing verse at the very end of the Bible. The real question of these stories isn't, why does God use water to wash things? It is this: an old man sits on a jagged, wind-swept cliff in the Aegean Sea. The island is Patmos. The year is roughly 90 AD. John, the last surviving apostle, is a political prisoner. The Roman Empire has not built iron bars to hold him in place. They do not need to. They use the Mediterranean. Every time John looks up from his parchment, he sees the same terrifying expanse. A dark, impassable ring of violently churning water. The sea is the lock on his cell door. It is the physical wall separating him from the churches he loves in Asia Minor. The cold salt spray hitting his wrinkled skin is a constant reminder of his exile. But John is not looking at the physical ocean today. He is staring into a tear in the fabric of reality. He is watching the final chapters of human history unfold. He is watching the sky roll up like a scroll and the dead stand before a throne. Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. He writes, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away." And then he adds 5 words that confuse modern readers, but carry an explosive payload of hope for the ancient mind. "And the sea was no more." Modern readers often stumble over this verse. We love the ocean. Why is water the one thing God constantly has to conquer? The writers of the Bible were not offering a poetic symbol for a Sunday school lesson. We build expensive resorts on the shoreline and spend our savings to sit on a balcony just to watch the tide come in. To a 21st century mind, a new earth without an ocean sounds like a severe downgrade. It sounds like a barren, dry desert. John is not describing the loss of a beach vacation. He is announcing the execution of a monster. Remember the ancient worldview. Remember the Tehom on the opening page of Genesis. The sea is the primordial chaos. It is the unpredictable, violent force that wrecks ships, swallows nations, and uncreates the ordered world. For the ancient Hebrew, the sea is where storms are born. The sea is the abyss that swallowed Jonah. The sea is the beast that constantly threatens the fragile garden of life. When John says the sea is no more, he is not making a geographical statement about the hydrology of eternity. He is making a theological promise. He is saying the chaos is permanently gone. The threat of unmaking has been eradicated from the architecture of reality. The boundary that the Creator had to draw on the first page of Genesis is no longer necessary, because the abyss that it held back was completely drained by the cross. There are no more terrifying midnight phone calls. They were diagnosing a fundamental reality of the human condition. They were naming the chaos that constantly threatens to swallow a life whole. There are no more sudden betrayals. There are no more blind forces of ruin waiting in the dark to drag the breathing world back to the bottom. The monster is dead. The chaos has been entirely consumed. But this presents a massive structural problem for the final page of the biblical scroll, because a garden cannot survive without water. If the ocean is gone, what keeps the new world alive? Look at the center of the Golden City. The ocean is gone. The chaos is dead. The abyss is drained, but the new world is not a dry desert. The water remains. It is simply tamed. It is fundamentally changed. Revelation chapter 22 opens with a single, glowing stream, a river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing directly down the middle of the great street. It does not crash against jagged rocks. It does not surge in the pitch black. It does not swallow fishermen in the dark. It is directed. It is pure. It flows from the throne of God and of the Lamb. This is not a new invention. It is a profound return. Go back to the very beginning. Go to Genesis chapter 2. Look at the world before the curse, before the flood erased the earth, before the Red Sea stacked into trembling walls, before the storms on Galilee, the unpredictable, violent forces, sickness, betrayal, sudden loss, the midnight phone call that can tear apart everything you have carefully built in a single afternoon. A river flowed out of Eden. It watered the garden. It split into 4 streams. It brought green life to the dust. The biblical story begins with a garden watered by a river. The biblical story ends with a city watered by a river. The water is not a terrifying boundary. It is the pulse of the new creation. Think about the structural difference between a sea and a river. A sea divides. An ocean separates continents. The abyss isolates you on an island of exile. But a river connects. A stream gathers people to its banks. A river builds a community around its source. A sea hides monsters in the freezing deep. A river reflects the light of the sun. A sea tastes like bitter salt. A river tastes like cold relief. Look at the banks of this new stream in John's vision. On either side of the river grows the tree of life. The leaves are for the healing of the nations. The fruit yields every single month. The roots drink deeply from the crystal water. The Tehom is gone. The Zauhudor remains. The untamed monster has been replaced by an endless artesian well. The water is no longer a threat. It is an open invitation. The Spirit and the bride say, "Come." Let the one who is thirsty come. We are a species quietly terrified of the deep, because we know how easily the waves can pull us under. To feel the actual weight, let the one who desires take the water of life without price. The chaos has been entirely transformed into communion. The entire story of the Bible is the story of water being put back in its proper place. But how does that actually help you today? when the sky is completely dark, and you are standing on the shoreline of your own personal storm. A spirit hovers over the pitch-black deep, and the chaos surrenders space for dry land to appear. The sky tears open for 40 days, and a corrupted world is unmade to save a single family. A massive wall of water stacks up in the dark, and 1,000,000 terrified slaves walk through the abyss to freedom. A king steps out onto the violent, foaming swell, and the ancient monster is trampled beneath his feet. A tired woman comes to a broken well at midday, and an artesian spring is opened to heal her deepest shame. A Roman spear pierces a crucified side, and the chaotic sea is finally drained into the dirt. An exiled apostle looks into a new, breathing world, and the terrifying ocean is replaced by a crystal river of life. There is only a heavy, suffocating darkness pressing down on a body of water that has no bottom. It is a completely hostile environment of the biblical story. You cannot look at a serene, sparkling lake. You have to start at the very beginning of the ancient scroll, before the light. Same element, same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the pierced side, the brutal, physiological reality of the fluid falling to the dust. The realization that the architect did not just stand safely on the shore and shout commands at the waves from a distance. He let the pressure of the depths collapse his own lungs. He let the Tehom swallow him, so that the monster would be entirely empty when it finally came for us. If you are in a season where the waters feel like they are rising up to your neck, where the chaos of a sudden medical diagnosis, a financial collapse, or a quiet, devastating betrayal is threatening to pull you under the surface, hear this: you are not drowning in a sea that has no master. The chaos is loud, but it is not sovereign. The one who walks on the waves has already absorbed the worst of the deep. You do not have to hold back the ocean with your own strength. You just have to hold on to the one who drank the abyss dry. And may the God who has never once surrendered a single inch of ground to the chaos reach down into your darkest storm and pull you safely up into the light, even turns on. You have to step into a mindset that the ancient world understood perfectly, but that a modern reader standing on a safe, paved sidewalk has entirely forgotten, because the people who wrote these texts didn't just see a body of water when they looked at the sea. They saw a monster. The Mediterranean coastline of Israel is essentially a straight, unbroken line of jagged rock and sand, unlike Greece with its 1,000 sheltered islands, or Egypt with the predictable, life-giving rhythm of the Nile. The land of the Bible has almost no natural deep-water ports. The ancient Israelites were shepherds, farmers, and hill-dwellers. They built their cities on high ridges and in dry valleys, safely distanced from the crushing, rhythmic roar of the surf. They did not build armadas. They did not sail out to discover new continents. If you stood on the shore at Joppa in the ancient world, feeling the cold spray of salt water against your skin, you did not see a trade route. You saw a black, churning expanse of wind and current, and spat splintered planks back onto the beach. For the ancient mind, the ocean is not a piece of real estate. It is an adversary. Nothing can survive here. Nothing can breathe. The water is wild, untamed, and entirely in control. All around Israel, the neighboring empires constructed elaborate mythologies to explain this terror. The Babylonians carved epics into heavy clay tablets about Tiamat, a monstrous, multi-headed dragon of the Salt Sea, who had to be slaughtered by a storm god so the world could be built from her severed corpse. The Canaanites sang terrified hymns to Yam, a violent deity of the oceanic depths who constantly threatened to flood the earth, unless he was beaten into submission with magical clubs. Every culture in the ancient Near East agreed on one fundamental reality: the sea is the ultimate enemy. The sea is an untamed, hungry force waiting in the dark to drag the ordered world back into the abyss. And the Hebrew writers do not discard this imagery. They weaponize it. When the biblical authors want to describe severe political instability, they describe roaring waves crashing against the rocks. When the psalmist feels like his life is falling apart, he does not say he is experiencing anxiety. He says his feet are sinking into the mire. that the waters have come up to his neck, that the cold current is sweeping him away. When the prophets envision the ultimate concentration of evil, they do not draw a man with horns and a pitchfork. They draw Leviathan, a twisting, armor-plated sea serpent thrashing in the black depths. Chaos is not a psychological state in the biblical imagination, and yet, a spirit, a rushing breath, hovers right over the face of the deep, and a voice speaks. Light cracks the dark. It is a physical location. And the terrifying truth of Genesis 1 is that when God creates the world, He does not vaporize the water. He restrains it. He draws a firm line in the sand and tells the violent waves exactly where they must stop. He builds an ordered, breathing world, a dry and safe garden, right in the middle of a hostile ocean. But the boundary is conditional. The water is always there, waiting just off the coast, pooling beneath the crust of the earth, hanging heavy above the firmament of the sky. And when the human beings inside the garden decide they want to sever themselves from the source of life, the boundary begins to crack. The architect removes his hand, and the deep decides to return. A drop of rain hits the dust, then another, then a torrential, blinding downpour. For 40 days, there is nothing but relentless, deafening noise. The ancient firmament cracks open. The hidden springs beneath the rocky earth burst upward. The oceans rise. The rivers overflow their banks. The safe, dry land of Genesis is swallowed whole. The highest peaks disappear under the swell. The breathing world drowns in the dark. The flood is not a weather event. It is a cosmic undoing. God is letting the primeval chaos back in. A firmament cuts through the violent swells, pushing the water back, forcing it to surrender space so that dry land can finally appear. He is removing the boundary he set on page 1. He is letting the ordered world return to its unmade state, a terrifying reboot of the entire system. The water reclaims the earth. Centuries pass. A new crisis arrives at the water's edge. 1 million fugitive slaves stand on a cold, muddy beach. The night air smells of salt and sheer panic. Behind them, the rhythmic, terrifying rumble of 600 Egyptian chariot wheels vibrates through the soles of their bare feet. Leather armor creaks. Horses breathe heavy in the dark. The greatest military machine on earth is closing in. Before them, the Red Sea thrashes in the wind. They are completely cornered. They are trapped between the empire that broke their backs and the chaos that wants to drown them. They have nowhere to run. They start screaming at Moses that they would rather be slaves than corpses in the surf. Moses steps to the shoreline. He raises a wooden staff. A scorching east wind begins to howl across the beach. The black water begins to tear. It rips straight down the middle. It pulls back. It violently stacks up on either side. Picture the scene. Towering, trembling walls of liquid standing at attention. Millions of gallons of crushing weight, held back by an invisible, unyielding hand. Water opens the book of Genesis, but it does not stop there. Water falls from the sky for 40 days to unmake a corrupted world. The seabed instantly dries into hard, cracked earth. 1 million terrified people walk right into the abyss. Staring up at the vibrating water hovering just above their heads, they cross over. The Egyptian army follows them into the trench, and the architect simply removes his hand. The walls collapse. The heavy chariots splinter into kindling. The empire is swallowed instantly by the chaos. The sea snaps shut like a trap, and the bodies wash up on the morning shore. The Red Sea is not a magic trick. It is a theological declaration. The God of the Hebrews commands the monster. He splits the beast open to save his people, and he weaponizes it to crush their abusers. But to feel the full terror of what is actually happening in these ancient waters, you cannot rely on English translations. You have to look at the exact Hebrew word humming underneath the text of Genesis. Because this word contains a nightmare, open the ancient scroll of Genesis to the very second verse. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. The word translated as the deep in your English Bible is the ancient Hebrew word Tehom. It appears 36 times in the Old Testament. Water stacks up like a massive, trembling wall to let 1,000,000 terrified fugitives escape across dry mud. And its range of meaning carries a weight that English vocabulary simply cannot hold. Tehom is the primordial ocean. It is the subterranean abyss, the chaotic, surging mass of black water that exists before time, before light, and before order. Linguistically, scholars note that it shares an ancient root with Tiamat, the Babylonian dragon of the sea. But the Hebrew writers do not grant it the status of a rival god. In Genesis, the Tehom is not a deity with a name. It is raw, unthinking, terrifying chaos, waiting in the absolute dark. If realizing that changes how you read the opening pages of the Bible, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the Hebrew writers do not just fear the Tehom as a physical navigational hazard. They view it as the ultimate spiritual threat. When the prophet Jonah is thrown over the side of a wooden ship into a raging Mediterranean storm, sinking like a heavy stone, into the freezing, crushing pressure of the depths, he prays from the belly of a great fish. And in Jonah chapter 2, he does not just say his lungs are burning. He says the Tehom has closed around him. Seaweed is wrapped around his head. Water pours from a split rock in a blistering, sun-baked desert to keep a wandering nation alive. A king steps out of a fishing boat. He has descended to the very roots of the mountains. He has been swallowed by the abyss. The Tehom is not merely a deep body of water. It is the anti-creation. It is the physical embodiment of everything that opposes the breathing, ordered world God built. When the writer of Psalm 42 cries out in anguish that deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls, he is using the exact word Tehom. He is saying the chaos outside of him is calling to the chaos inside of him. The waters are rising. The emotional structure is failing. The unmaking of his life has begun. For thousands of years, this profound theology of the sea sits deep in the bones of the Jewish people. They know the boundary between the dry land and the abyss is fragile. They know the monster is always hungry, always waiting to reclaim the shore. And they know, from the book of Job to the Psalms, with absolute theological certainty, that Yahweh alone possesses the power to tread upon the violent waves of the sea. Which is why what happens centuries later, on a small, violently storming lake in northern Israel, shatters their categories completely. It is the fourth watch of the night. A small, wooden fishing boat pitches violently in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. The sky is pitch black, to walk on a raging sea. And later, a Roman spear draws water from his pierced side on a wooden cross. Same element. Again and again, a sudden, violent windstorm sweeps down from the Golan Heights, turning the lake into a churning, foaming nightmare. Freezing spray stings the eyes of the men on board. The oars crack against the unrelenting swell. The heavy timber of the hull groans under the crushing pressure. These men are not tourists. They are professional fishermen. They grew up on this water. They know its moods. They know its hidden currents. And they know, with absolute certainty, that they are about to die. The Tehom has opened its mouth. The chaos is pulling them under. And then, through the blinding rain, they see a silhouette. A figure is moving across the surface of the deep. He is not swimming. He is not frantically treading water to stay afloat. He is walking. Every step he takes is a deliberate, unhurried strike against the chaos. The waves roll and thrash beneath his feet, but they do not break him. The wind howls against his face, but it does not slow him down. He is using the ancient, terrifying enemy of the human race as pavement. When the disciples see him, they scream in terror. They think it is a ghost. They think the abyss has finally manifested a demon to drag them to the bottom. But a voice cuts through the roaring wind. "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." In the original Greek text,